I had body integrity identity disorder.
She's both victim and perpetrator here.
I went blind on purpose, but I don't feel it was a choice.
So this woman really put drain cleaner in her eyes because she had a craving to do it. Oh yeah, you heard that right. Today I'm going to be talking about a woman by the name of Jewel Shuping, who in 2006 made the drastic decision to blind herself on purpose. Like, she chose to do this to herself. Tell me that's not insane to you. This woman decided to permanently disable herself and make her life 1,000 times more difficult. Now, I know what you're thinking. What could possibly make someone want to do this kind of thing to themselves? Why would you ever think that permanently blinding yourself is a good idea? When she was a kid, her mom told her that
I was told by my mother that if I looked into the sun, I'd go blind, and so I stared into the sun for hours on end.
and that fascination with being blind never went away. See, Jewel apparently has something called Body Integrity Identity Disorder, or BIID for short, according to an article written on PubMed. I know, never get your medical information from the internet, blah, 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 but hey, I'm an internet show. What do you expect? Anyway, this article says that BIID is an extremely rare phenomenon of persons who desire the amputation of one or more healthy limbs or who desire paralysis. Unfortunately, because of how rare BIID actually is, there hasn't really been a lot of research into how it affects people. All we really know is that it typically starts manifesting in kids around the age of 8. And in rare cases, it can lead people to try and permanently hurt themselves, sometimes even to the point of amputation. Now, according to Jewel, this is something that she suffered with for well over 10 years of her life. She did everything she could to try and permanently damage her own vision, including staring at the sun for hours on end. Now, she says it's because she always felt as though she should have been born blind. It was something that she thought about all the time, and that by the time she'd reached 21 years old, it felt like there was an alarm constantly going off in her head. But while Jewel might believe that to be the case, experts aren't so sure. See, they're not convinced she actually has BIID because this condition only refers to those people who desire amputation of their limbs, and not really people blinding themselves. In November of 2015, Jewel appeared on an episode of The Doctors, where they discussed her case at length, including her initial diagnosis of having BIID. And one of the doctors, Dr. Travis Stork, raised his concerns, saying that he was afraid that she'd been a victim of the power of suggestion. Dr. Stork's main point was basically that he was worried Jewel had been taken advantage of when she was at a pretty low point in her life. She had stumbled across a bunch of message boards, not only encouraging people to harm themselves. By the way, don't harm yourself. You are a wonderful, amazing person the way you are. Don't harm yourself. But then the sites would show her how to do it. The concern here is that she'd latched onto that diagnosis and used it as an excuse to then go on and actually hurt herself. As Dr. Stork himself says,
my fear is that people who are going through a tough spot in life are going to grasp onto this diagnosis and harm themselves and then later regret it.
But whether she actually has BIID or not doesn't really matter, because in 2006, she made the decision to take it one step further. She met with a psychiatrist allegedly by the name of Alan Peening, and after 2 weeks, he'd agreed to help her blind herself. Someone take this man's license away. How did he ever become a doctor? How? Oh, wait a second. Someone did take his license away. Thank God. But 2 weeks? Seriously? That's all it took for you to decide to help this woman to permanently injure herself? Are you sure you don't need psychiatric treatment? Call me crazy, but I think something this important, maybe something that you talk about over, a couple of years? Maybe? At least? As bad as I feel for this woman, can we please just talk about how messed up it is that she actually found a psychiatrist to help her do it? I'm no doctor, but surely that goes against every kind of medical practice law ever made? I mean, I haven't read the Hippocratic Oath, but it's gotta be in there. As one commenter points out, imagine going to a psychologist saying, I want to be skinny, and then helping them be anorexic. This is the one person you're supposed to be able to trust and who is meant to help you manage this condition in a way that doesn't involve you actually hurting yourself. And instead of that, he helps you do it? Oh yeah, you heard that right. Not only did this man agree that she should blind herself, he literally helped her do it. As in, he was physically in the room with her when she did it. In fact, she didn't even physically do anything. He did. According to Jewel, he put drain cleaner in her eyes and then he waited half an hour before taking her to the hospital to get any kind of treatment. So not only do we have the experts doubting Jewel's entire story and doubting that she even has this condition, but we also have the public turning on her as well. A Snopes article reveals that backlash against her was almost immediate. People started picking apart her story pretty quickly and raising some really important questions about how true it all was, questioning everything from how long she'd known her psychiatrist to how long they waited before going to the hospital. They even pointed out that none of the medical staff apparently tried to ask her about what had happened. It all just seems a little bit too convenient for anyone to fully believe that's how it actually went down. Which then makes me wonder if maybe she did just make up this entire thing for attention. I don't know, it seems kind of sus. And as if that wasn't already suspicious enough, this Snopes article also talks about how she did an interview with a North Carolina news station called WNCN in 2015, a whole 9 years after she first tried blinding herself. And instead of using this as an opportunity to tell her story about suffering from BIID and feeling like she had to be blind again, she claims the entire thing was an accident? She sits there and tells people that the reason she's blind is because, and I quote, I was pouring drain cleaner down the drain and it splashed back in my face. She then goes on to say that the accident caused her to become heavily depressed, but that once she'd realized that her life wasn't really over, she learned to be okay with it. I'm honestly at a loss for words. What am I meant to believe? Which version of this story is the truth? Did she accidentally blind herself and make up the whole BIID thing for attention? Or did she do it deliberately and then make up this accident story to try and gain some sympathy? As if things weren't already confusing enough, in the original video talking about Jewel's condition, they say she blinded herself in 2006. But according to a bunch of posts on an archived message board, Jewel didn't actually try and blind herself until June 2008. These posts went into great detail on what she wanted to do and how she was going to get away with it. She even had backup plans in case things went wrong the first time. This whole timeline is such a mess, and I don't even want to try and pick it apart. I don't know where to start, and I honestly don't think it matters that much. She's still blind, and people still hate her for it. If you've watched any video about Jewel's situation, then you already know that the comment sections are a mess, to say the least. There's a lot of unwarranted hate for this woman out there, and some of it's pretty gross. I might not agree with her decision, and I might wish that she'd found another coping mechanism to deal with her condition, but I would never say she doesn't deserve to live or say that she blinded herself so she wouldn't have to look at her own reflection. The hell is wrong with some of you? But it's not all that bad. While there are definitely a lot of really horrible comments on the video, there are also some really interesting ones. There are a lot of comments from members of the blind community who have chosen to voice their opinion, and boy howdy, they are not happy. Like Molly Burke, for example, who said, I find this absolutely offensive and don't understand how anyone in the blind community could be accepting of her choice. Or a brighter star who commented, I miss my vision, and do not find this woman inspiring in the least. And that, more than anything else, seems to be the biggest problem that people have with Jewel's entire situation. Whether she intended on doing it or not, by deliberately making a choice to become blind, it feels a lot like she's glamorizing blindness. And I get why people are so upset about it. The vast majority of the blind community didn't choose to be blind. For some people, it's something that they were literally born with. For others, it's something that happened later in life. But either way, they didn't choose to make life harder for themselves. The world is not kind to people with disabilities. It is really, really hard to live a normal, and I'm using that word pretty loosely here, life as an individual with a disability. So I completely understand why people are so angry at her. Because yeah, okay, she says that it never really felt like she had a choice, and it was something that had been eating away at her for years. But it was still a decision. She still acted on those thoughts and took her own vision, something that almost every visually impaired person would kill for. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys for just a second. There's something about this whole story that's just really sad to me. Now, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely bananas, and it is genuinely one of the most insane things I've ever heard. And sure, I've made jokes about this woman and the things she's done to herself because, boy, has she made some interesting decisions. But when you actually stop and think about it for a second, it's also just really, really sad. Whether you believe she has BIID or not, she's still a woman who desperately needed psychological help to treat a mental illness that was directly impacting her everyday life. I think that's probably something a lot of us can relate to, especially these days, whether we want to admit it or not. She had been struggling with this desire to be blind since she was 6 years old. 6 years old! And instead of getting the help she needed, she ended up finding someone that fed directly into that illness and made things worse. Would she have ever taken that plunge and actually hurt herself if she hadn't found that crazy psychiatrist to help her do it? We're never gonna know, because that's not how it played out. But what do you guys think? Which story do you think is true? What do you think should happen to the psychiatrist that helped her do it? Do you think her actions are an insult to the blind community? Let us know in the comments below.